pretty straightforward. If you're trying to reach an audience, you go where the audience is. These days, that means social media. But as the list of social media platforms grows, at what point do newsrooms say, enough? In the beginning, there was Facebook, which still reigns as the top dog in social media. By some estimates, over 40% of Americans get news there. There's also YouTube, where networks post plenty of news reports. Then there's Twitter, the social networking service that's a favorite of journalists and political junkies. More lately, we've seen Snapchat, Vine, and Instagram. Now CNN is working with the messaging service Kik and the BBC with Yik Yak. There's also Tumblr and Reddit. That's a lot of platforms, and according to the Pew Research Center, most social media users only rely on one site for news. Sounds like a very old media problem, audience fragmentation. So Shirley, you're part of this big, ambitious effort to reimagine the Boston Globe. When you guys talk about this stuff behind closed doors, without asking you to give away any trade secrets, how important do you think engagement across all these platforms is?
I mean, right now we do Twitter. I mean, that's the main social media, and Facebook. Though we have an arm's length relationship with Facebook because we don't want to put all our eggs in one basket. I mean, that's what a lot of other publishers, or Washington Post, have done a lot with Facebook. And we've seen Facebook can change its algorithm on a turn of a dime, which they're doing the last 2 months, which, for published news stories get, I guess, worse play on their news feed. So we're going through that exercise. Which social media platforms should we align our brand with? But more important than that, I mean, we need to learn how to tell stories online. I think that is our primary mission right now. How do we adapt to this new digital world? How do we tell stories differently online, whether it's on Snapchat or Instagram or Facebook or Twitter? I think that is really the real focus of our work on how to tell stories differently.
I think that, so I'm active on Twitter. I've interacted with you on Twitter, interacted with you and you. I'm not so sure about you, Roy. You may be the only person at this table who is an avid Snapchat user, right?
Not too avid.
Not Snapchat?
No,
Am I just
old.
confusing you with another guy? Confusing you with Dan Kennedy?
I'm not 22. Yeah, Dan Kennedy is on Snapchat 24/7.
Remind me, there was a tweet that you sent out earlier today talking about
Instagram. So let's be clear about this. We talk about social platforms. We talk about social media. There's Facebook, and then there's everybody else. Facebook today generates about 40% of all the visitors to American news sites. Google contributes about 40% of all the visitors to news sites, and no one else is over 5%. Facebook is more than 10 times as big as Twitter, the next strongest in terms of driving audience to news organizations and news stories. So Facebook is completely dominant and growing more dominant by the day. They're the elephant in the room.
But aren't they growing older too?
They're growing older. They certainly are, but that's why their main concern is Snapchat. Snapchat, which is not something I suspect any of us are spending all of our time on, is nonetheless very popular among teenagers, college students, and people in their 20s. Right now, it's Facebook is far and away the focus of any social media strategy if you're at a news organization. Twitter is second because journalists love Twitter. It is the most journalistic medium in 1,000 different ways. It's sort of like a headline feed, feels like a wire service. And then you have Instagram and Snapchat, who are doing interesting things to compete with one another. Instagram came out with a very Snapchat-like feature this week, which I think is quite interesting. But for most outlets, Facebook is where you go first, Twitter where you go second.
Yeah, in my universe, Snapchat is when I give Buddy, my lab, a treat and then talk to her for a while. Okay, that's all. And I know I'm going to sound like the old fuddy-duddy get-off-my-lawn guy here. I don't know ultimately how the business model's going to work, and my hat's off to people, mainly younger journalists I see, who can keep all those balls in the air. It's amazing. I think the danger is in your desire to reach all these different platforms simultaneously and feed all these different beasts, are you going to wind up feeding them crap? Because you don't have time to think, you don't have time to write properly, you don't have time to source properly. And if you take away those aspects of journalism, I mean, you're just a machine stamping out widgets. And in the long run, I don't think there's a market for crap, although within reason. I don't think there's a market for journalistic crap.
I guess what I think of these new social media platforms, it's telling stories differently. It's not going out and reporting. Maybe it's more visual. It's using Twitter feeds. It's a different kind of storytelling, not the same as traditional reporting. So I guess it's some people may, I don't see it as crap. I think it's just telling stories differently, and we need to learn how to do that, and we haven't been trained, and we haven't had enough experience doing that yet. And maybe it feels like crap because we haven't done enough of it.
All right, Roy, are you fuddy-duddy
Oh, no.
or young idealist?
No, neither one. I'm sort of in between, an old idealist. Anyway, for a time I ran a website, and the reason we used the different apps was to get our messages out, to become part of the conversation. It was a business website. And that's what I use it for mostly now, is to find out what my friends are reading. A lot of them are journalists. So it's a great way for me to find out what other journalists, like the people at this table, what you're reading and what stories are the most interesting. And that's why I think it's going to continue to grow as such. And the more apps, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
I'll see you guys on Yik Yak.